right. All right, good evening, folks. Welcome to Monday Night Law here on Kirk's Law Corner. And this will be our 4th of July. I even got my fancy sparkly shirt on here for that. So y'all see that. My 4th of July shirt here. I really like this shirt. It's kind of nice. A little bit of issue. Got a strike on YouTube from last week's video, so YouTube was shutting me down from broadcasting, so I had to start all over again. So that was part of the delay there. Sorry about that. But I'm here. Here we go. Woohoo! Good to see a sister over here on Telegram, Jamie, and all your buddies watching with you. My back it's trying. I'm able to get up and walk around, but doing little stuff. Ain't doing any lifting, I'll tell you that. Thanks for asking, Walter, over here on Telegram. So hopefully that, here, let me check Rumble just to make sure. That should have went. Yep, looks good. Shining light. Thank you for your comment out there. So, we're going to go over the 4 basic founding documents. So many people are not aware that there's more documents than just the Declaration of Independence. And you will be very enlightened. And those of you that have already watched my episode 1 of the educational series, well, you should know this already. But this is a special occasion, special time. A lot of new people are waking up, paying attention, watching podcasters like myself. There's a plethora of people out there that are really trying to show the truth about what's really going on, what has happened. I guess there's probably a very minute few that are actually showing the history of law, like myself. I've been digging in the law and the history of law since 1995. Well, I'm going to explain all that here, Walter, here just shortly. When we get there, the question is how did we come to celebrate the 4th when it was signed on the 2nd? Well, I have this 21-volume set of the Annals of America here, and this one is volume 2. This one actually, and see, this is one of the reasons why it's so important to know about the Lee's Resolution, the Virginia Declaration of Rights, and then the Virginia Constitution. So you got June 7th is the Lee's Resolutions when it was proposed. Okay? That resolution was signed by the Continental Congress in Philadelphia on July 2nd. The Declaration of Independence was signed by John Hancock on July 4th and was not fully ratified by the other delegates and all the representatives of all the other colonies until August. I thought it was August 8th, but it was August 2nd, which is right here in this book. Now, the thing about this is that's all that's in this book. is the Virginia Declaration of Rights, the Virginia Constitution, and the Declaration of Independence. And it makes reference to the Lee's Resolution. I thought that the Lee's Resolution was in here. And I'm going to have to double check because it's been a little while. Martial law in Virginia, 1775. Gee, I wonder what's going on with that. I don't think Benjamin Franklin autobiography. Yeah, I don't think the Lee's Resolution is in here. Thomas Paine's Plain Arguments for the Independence. There's some very interesting writings in this Annals of America. But one of the ones that's not in here is the Lee's Resolution. But the Virginia Declaration of Rights, and here's John Adams on the Foundation of Government. That's an interesting read, which that's what leads into this right here. But yep, there's no... How about the people as constitution makers? I need to really dig back into this book and start sharing some of this stuff. But it's going to be very interesting tonight because I'm also going to expose Avalon for hiding the truth. Okay? Okay. So, shining light out here on Rumble. Okay. We have to go back to the very beginning. These are the founding documents. Okay? What our founders did is they created a independent sovereign nation state, a new nation. That nation is called America. And when you create a new nation, you have to declare its ideology, its ideas, set of ideas, its morals, principles, which come from religion. And for the example, we have the British colony. The British is Catholicism as its ideology. Okay, Christianity is a separate ideology. Okay, and we're going to get into that. And so we have to fully comprehend why these documents are so important. Because when you create a new nation, you have to declare your ideology, or also known as the law of the nation. America separated, essentially, from Great Britain. Okay? July 2nd with the resolution in the Continental Congress in Philadelphia, which was part of the territory of Virginia. Okay, so many people think, Pennsylvania. That was the colony. Was not an independent sovereign state yet. Okay? The territorial landmass of Virginia is quite large. In fact, technically speaking, 7 of the so-called states were created out of the territory of Virginia. And this is the reason why it's so important to know this, because this is at the root of all law for the nation called America. I'm not talking about the continent, North America. We're talking about the nation state, our state of being, free and independent of all other nations. We're not under anybody else's thumb. Okay? So this is where we get into the law of nations and the people having all political power. All of it. Not some of it, not most of it, but all of it. And this is the power that belonged to the people. And the people back then knew this. They knew the law. They read the law of nations. They lived it. They already knew all this stuff because they were very well educated back then, unlike we are today as a world as a whole. But here in America, the nation is not a country. It is a nation. And what we call states are actually countries. Because a nation is composed of all of the countries. Right straight out of Law of Nations defines that. So this stuff that we call state of Idaho, state of, that's a corporation. Idaho is supposed to be a territory. It would be Idaho State. An independent sovereign nation state. Governed by the people. Self-governed. So there's a lot to comprehend and then understand here with how all this is supposed to be. And not only just how it's supposed to be, but how it is. Facts. Real facts of law. Real law. Not code. Not Roman civil law. Not regulations. Not policy, which is most often mispronounced as police. It is pronounced policy. Hooked on phonics here. Spell it out. It's pronounced policy. The word police does not exist. Period. It's pronounced policy. C-E. Policy. Yeah, right. Go to the etymology on it. It even tells you that. And then the whole history behind it. That's them standing armies that we're going to read. That's the stuff that the England, Great Britain created. This policy officer at the docks. And that'll be for another show. Probably, I should do a follow-up with that on next Monday Night Law. And the history of the policy officer, going back to the early 1700s, which is exactly what our founders were talking about when they said no standing armies. Why the Second Amendment reads that what is necessary for our security and safety? A well-regulated militia. Not a police force. Not a policy officer. This is what they were being subjected to then. Bills of attainder. Legislation that prescribed punishment. That guaranteed an award before you ever even committed it. That's also the part of the no ex post facto law. No bills of attainder, no ex post facto laws, and there shall be no law impairing the obligations of a contract. Would be void for any effect for fraud. So, we're going to get right into this, okay? We're going to go right to Avalon, because my book doesn't have that. And of course, I'll have to. Right, I got to go over here. Because this should be, this should be good. Everybody should be able to see this. Okay, so I pulled this off of Avalon many years ago. Okay. But this is where I'm going to show you the truth and how they're trying to hide just one small little thing about our right to a trial by jury. So, go over here to Avalon. Avalon.law.yale.edu. And we're going to read this so we fully comprehend what's going on here. Now, this was in a resolution introduced into the Continental Congress by Richard Henry Lee from Virginia, proposing a Declaration of Independence, June 7, 1776. Now, this is short and sweet. Okay? Now, the main source for this has come from documents illustrative of the formation of the Union of the American States. Government Printing Office, 1927, House Document Number 398, selected, arranged, indexed by Charles C. Tanzel. I've actually went and got this book now from the archives. So, it's all legitimate. They want to hide all this stuff from us. The truth. You'll be very enlightened if you're watching live now, or if you're watching this later, you're going to be very, very enlightened. I can tell you right now. Resolved that these united colonies, are, and of right ought to be, free and independent states, that they are absolved from all allegiance to the British Crown, and that all political connection between them and the state of Great Britain is and ought to be totally dissolved. Basically, what that is saying is kick frickin' rocks, Great Britain. We're tired of your tyranny, and we are policy separating from you, and we're going to declare ourselves as a free and independent nation state. Because a state is technically the nation, as defined in the law of nations. A nation state. I'd really appreciate it if people would not share links to other stuff. I'm trying to get that. Okay, now the next part. That it is expedient forthwith to take the most effectual measures for forming foreign alliances, that a plan of what? Confederation be prepared and transmitted to the respective colonies for their consideration and approbation. We are a confederate republic, not a constitutional republic, because that's that union. Again, a union is a league of friendship. A league of friendship is a confederation. We are, in fact, our economy is supposed to be capitalism, and our form of government is a confederate republic. Okay? So right here, in this resolution done in the Continental Congress, lays it out very clear that a plan of confederation. Okay. So now, let's move on to the next document, the Virginia Declaration of Rights, which is June 12th. Just a few days later. It's almost like they had this all planned out, which they did. That a plan of confederation be prepared and transmitted to the respective colonies for the consideration of probation. Okay, so that is the Lee's resolutions that was proposed into the Continental Congress June 7th. Okay, so now we're going to go down to the Virginia Declaration of Rights. There's part of the Virginia plan if you want to read some of that stuff. But here's the Virginia Declaration of Rights, June 12, 1776. And then when we get to the Virginia Constitution, we will see that they have pulled it down off of here. You can't get to it. It just, nope, sorry, it's just not here anymore. Now we're going to bounce around a little bit on this Virginia Declaration of Rights between Avalon and previous Avalon and my book. But we're going to start with my book first, even though I have this pulled up on the screen. The Virginia Declaration of Rights, page 432 out of the volume 2 of Annals of America. The top portion up here, which I'm going to try. I got to do this first, I guess. If it'll let me. So up here, there's some writing above this Virginia Declaration of Rights, and that's what I'm going to read from first. It says, Virginia's Declaration of Rights, little help here, was in many ways a central document of its era, drawn upon by Jefferson for the opening paragraphs of the Declaration of Independence. It was widely copied by other colonies, became the basis of the Bill of Rights in the Constitution, and had considerable influence in France at the time of the French Revolution. It was written by George Mason and adopted by the Virginia Constitutional Convention on June 12, 1776. Now listen carefully. As the theoretical foundation of all government. Okay, we understand that now. Fully. Not just comprehend, but understand. This is the theory, the foundation of all government, the law of the nation. Because this is declaring, because declarations lay down the law. Because law is that which is laid down, ordained, or established. Declarations, declare. D means down, clarify. So when we do a declaration, we're declaring, we're laying down the law. And essentially, bills of rights are declarations which lay down the law. And as we'll read in the Declaration of Independence, like it says, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted. The Constitution is the instrument of government. So you have to lay down the law first, and then you create the instrument of government. So this is where the confusion is about, well, what is the law? Our rights are the law. Not the code, not statutes, not regulations. That's all policy. And it only applies to them and those that are bound by the policy under a contract. Okay, so now that we fully comprehend and understand that this is the ideology, the theoretical foundation of all government here. And I know Rob's got another verbiage there. I don't know if Rob has is paying attention, and if he has that somewhere, I should get that copied and pasted. But all right, so now we need to get into this law. Okay, so the verbiage, thank you, brother. It is the basis and foundation. Okay? It's the fundamental root. And to really tell you what it really is it's the law. It's declaring the law of the nation, our ideology, which is a religion. And we're going to see that here in just a minute. Okay? That all men, not all persons, all men, because we're mankind. What kind of man are you? We are creations of God. God created mankind. God did not create persons. Okay. That all men are by what? Nature equally free and independent. That right there, my friends, comes from the laws of nature, as it is in the preliminaries of the law of nations, and have certain inherent rights, of which, when they enter into a state of society, they cannot, by any compact. Compact is also contract. Deprive or divest their posterity, namely, the enjoyment of life and liberty, with the means of acquiring and possessing property, and pursuing and obtaining happiness and safety. Now, it has been said that it referred to is that's pursuing and obtaining happiness, safety is land, acquiring that land. Property, technically speaking, the first definition of property is an aggregate of guaranteed rights. Rights as the law, and it's already our property. So when we use the word rights, we're actually saying law, because it actually comes from the French word droit, meaning right or law. They're synonymous. They're interchangeable. So when it says Virginia Declaration of Rights, you could put Virginia Declaration of Law, because this is laying down the law. Remember, declaration, declare, lay down. So this is how it's done. And notice that this is a separate document. It is separate from the Constitution itself, because this is the law being laid down, and it's laid down first, and then the government is instituted to secure this body of law, our rights as the law. Okay. So that's just the first very beginning of this. Number 2, that all power is vested in and consequently derived from the people. That magistrates are their trustees and servants, and at all times amenable to them. They are the servants. We are the masters. See number 1. Okay? We cannot, by any compact, deprive or divest their posterity, namely the enjoyment of life, liberty, the means of acquiring and possessing property, and pursuing and obtaining happiness and safety. Anything that comes even close to infringing on that is void for any effect, as completely and wholly unlawful. Because which one stands on a higher plane? This Virginia Declaration of Rights, which is already the law. It's already the law. Or a magistrate, which is a trustee or servant, which they're all servants of the people, by the people, for the people. That's a citizen, city servant. They're the servants. That's the compact. They give up some of their sovereignty in the exchange for the emoluments of those offices they get elected or appointed into position of public trust, which we require them, pursuant to Article 6, Clause 3, whether it's state or federal. If you're a member of the legislative, executive, or judicial branch, either state or federal, whether elected or appointed, you shall, that is mandatory, be bound by oath or affirmation to support this Constitution. And the servants cannot alter the laws of their own creation. That's Law of Nations, Book 1, Chapter 3, Section 34. That is a capital crime. Means treason, punishable by death, to try to alter the law of your own creation as a servant. As we're going to get into, that government is, or ought to be, instituted for the common benefit, protection, and security of the people, nation, or community. That is the fundamental principle of creating government. This is what is called the intent. The intent of the Creator, which is the people. See number 2. Of all the various modes and forms of government, that is best, which is capable of producing the greatest degree of happiness and safety, and is most effectually secured against the danger of maladministration, and that whenever any government shall be found inadequate or contrary to these purposes, see, this is the intent of creating government, a majority of the community hath an indubitable, unalienable, and indefeasible right to reform, alter, or abolish it in such manner as shall be judged most conducive to the public weal. This is a right and power that belongs to the people, and it can never be taken away. Why? Imagine that. Number 4, that no man or set of men, not no person or set of persons. Now we deal in man, the living flesh. Not human, not color of man, but man. And not a man or a woman. Get rid of the a, folks. It's just, I am man. That's it. Okay. Number 4, that no man or set of men are entitled to exclusive or separate emoluments or privileges from the community, but in consideration of public services, which not being descendable, neither ought the offices of magistrate, legislator, or judge be hereditary. All right. That's them emolument stuff, you know. An emolument is any advantage, profit, or gain received due to one's position of employment or holding of office. That's right. That's the person, governor. The man is elected into the position of governor and receives all the advantages, profits, and gains from that office. That's the person, governor. Lieutenant governor. Those are persons in their proper person, in propria persona. Okay. So, that's not supposed to be happening. As we will see later down the road here. That the legislative and executive powers of the state should be separate and distinct from the judicative. And that the members of the... What? Members. Geez, there's them words again. Of the two first, which is the legislative and executive, may be restrained from oppression by feelings feeling and participating the burthens of the people, they should, at fixed periods, be reduced to a private station. So the reciprocal of private is public. So they're in the public, and then they're reduced back down to the private. Return into that body from which they were originally taken, and the vacancies be supplied by frequent, certain, and regular elections in which all or any part of the former members to be again eligible or ineligible as the laws shall direct. Okay. So here's a good indicator that there are supposed to be term limits. And the term limits are already in the Constitution. That's right. So you can say, oh, we got to have term limits. Okay, it's already in there. 6 years. 6 years for House of Representatives and the Senate. Then they have to be what? At the end of that 6 years, that fixed period, they're to be reduced back to the private station and return into that body from which they were originally taken, and the vacancies be supplied by frequent, certain, or regular elections in which all or any part of the former members to be again eligible or ineligible as the laws shall direct. So like the president can only run 2 terms. Okay. Now, let's get into them elections, because this is section 6 here. That elections of members to serve as representatives of the people in assembly ought to be free. Okay? And that all men having sufficient evidence of permanent common interest with an attachment to the community have the right of suffrage and cannot be taxed or deprived of their property for public uses without their own consent or that of their representatives so elected, nor bound by any law to which they have not in like manner assented for the public good. Okay, this is a loaded clause of this declaration. 1, it forbids taxes. Well, I guess we'll start with the right of suffrage. That you have to be, what? Sufficient evidence of permanent common interest with and attachment to the community. Have the right of suffrage. So, back in the day, the free inhabitants didn't necessarily have the right to vote, because none of it pertained to them. They were really, really in the private and had nothing to do with politics, because it was never supposed to come to them. This is going to be the eye opener for a lot of people out there. You know, that's just some sovereign citizen anarchist. Blah, 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 blah. No. Let's go back to number 1 again. That all men are by nature equally free and independent. Independent of government. Independent of even their fellow man. Their neighbor. That's right. Unless he gets elected or appointed in a position of public trust and takes that oath of office. That's what the oath is for. The oath. Maxim of law. There is no firmer bond among men than an oath, which comes from the Bible. That's right. Some people out there will say, oh, you don't want to take an oath. You don't want to take... Yes, we require that. because God said there is no firmer bond among men than an oath. And that is why we require public servants to be bound by oath or affirmation to support this Constitution, because they are the members. That's what a citizen is. All right. Now, here's one that's happened over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. That all power of suspending laws or the execution of laws by any authority without consent of the representatives of the people is injurious to their rights and ought not to be exercised. Same crap that would happen in the English Bill of Rights of 1689. This is a repeat of history again and again and again and again and again and again. Now, this one is where we're going to expose Avalon for taking this out. That in all capital or criminal prosecutions... Now, wait a minute. Why doesn't that say... Oh, that in all felonies and misdemeanors... Because felonies and misdemeanors come from the Roman civil law. We have capital, which means the punishment is death. And as we'll go to the 6th Amendment, or 6th Article of the Bill of Rights. Actually, no. That is 5th. It says capital or infamous crimes. Nowhere does it say felony or misdemeanor. That's the Roman civil law, the code. We're supposed to have capital or infamous. So it's either punishable by death or it's not. So, pay attention here. A man hath a right to demand the cause and nature, that's that probable cause, of his accusation, to be confronted with the accusers and witnesses. See, the accuser is the one who has standing to claim a right to a cause of action. To call for evidence in his favor, and to a speedy trial by, an impartial jury of his vicinage, without whose unanimous consent he cannot be found guilty. It doesn't say a man has to prove his innocence. And this is the beyond a reasonable doubt standard. That you must get all 12 men to give their consent. Unanimous consent. All of them. If there is one that says, I'm just not quite convinced, I'm not giving my consent, that is an acquittal. Not a hung jury. That's shmoo made up by the bar. Well, we'll just do this again. We'll just try you again. That's why they said no double jeopardy, because that's what they were doing. You get one shot at this. That's due process of law. But they left out a speedy trial of 12 men. The impartial jury of 12 men of his vicinage. Where is that? We'll go back in time. I should go check the Wayback Machine for that and see. Here it is back in 2007. that in all capital criminal prosecutions a man hath a right to demand the cause and nature of his accusation, to be confronted with the accusers and witnesses, to call for evidence in his favor, and to a speedy trial by an impartial jury of 12 men of his vicinage, without whose unanimous consent he cannot be found guilty. That's exactly how it reads right here out of my Annals of America. That in all capital criminal prosecutions, a man hath the right to demand the cause and nature of his accusations, to be confronted with the accusers and witnesses, to call for evidence in his favor, to a speedy trial by an impartial jury of 12 men of his vicinage, without whose unanimous consent he cannot be found guilty, nor can be compelled to give evidence against himself. That's that right to remain silent. The Fifth Amendment, some people will refer to. That no man be deprived of his liberty, except by the, what? Law of the land, or the judgment of his peers. Where does it say? By a statute, by the code, by a regulation? No, it's by the law of the land. And statutes are not law of the land. Enactments of the legislature are not law of the land. It's not law. One more spot. Right here, and this is the. Let me back that up. This is the 7S Thorpe that it refers to here. Volume 7, pages 3812 to 3814. I'll be darned, I guess that would be this page right here. Oh, there it is, page 3812. This is page 3813. Right out of my Annals of America book. This is where Annals of America got it from. This is the organic law and the constitutions of the several states and blah, blah, state and federal constitution. This is the history, right? The historical documents. It comes in 7 volumes because there's a crap ton of documents throughout history. So we'll go down here from the book itself, put together by Francis Newton Thornton. Pardon me, Francis Newton Thorpe. There it is, Section 8. That in all capital criminal prosecutions, a man hath the right to demand the cause and nature of his accusation, to be confronted with the accuser and witnesses, to call forth evidence in his favor, to speedy trial by an impartial jury of 12 men of his vicinage, without whose unanimous consent he cannot be found guilty. Okay? So you'll notice that some of this verbiage, right, goes right into the Bill of Rights, like it says at the top portion of Annals of America here. That excessive bail ought not to be required, nor excessive fines imposed, nor cruel and unusual punishments inflicted. Gee, that kind of almost sounds like the 8th. This is going to kind of sound like the 4th. That general warrants, whereby any officer or messenger may be commanded to search suspected places without evidence of a fact committed, or to seize any person or persons not named, or whose offense is not particularly described and supported by evidence, are grievous and oppressive and ought not to be granted. Now that's got just a little bit more powerful verbiage than the 4th, right? But this is the history of the right. This verbiage right here is just as valid as the 4th, because Bills of Rights are just merely declaratory of the common law. Uh-oh. That's right. I should pull that one up just to clarify that one. Yeah, just so we get to clarify this, and hopefully a whole bunch of crap don't just come up on the screen. It shouldn't. It should come up over here. Okay. So this is American Jurisprudence, Volume 16, second edition, Constitutional Law. I'm going to go down to 100, but I want to touch on 98 here real quick. And this is from 2017 update, August 2017. So this is fairly new stuff. So it's not like this is really old, you know, back when I went down to the law library and got this. But under Section 98, particular constitutional language, when we're talking about prohibitory language stated in the Constitution is nearly always construed as mandatory. So like when it says shall not be infringed, that's right, it's mandatory, it's prohibitory. There's no jurisdiction, none. If directions are given respecting the time and mode of proceeding in which a power should be exercised, there is at least a strong presumption that it was designed to be exercised in that time and mode only. Bada bing, bada boom. Mandatory language, folks. Constitutional provisions imposing duties upon the governor and the legislature have been held mandatory. Imagine that. A limitation on power. It must be done this way, and these are the powers that you have, and only the powers that you have. However, a constitutional article providing that all laws are to be made for the good of the whole, and the burden of the state ought to be fairly distributed among its citizens, presents no constitutional restraint upon the legislative power of the legislature because it was addressed to the legislature by way of advice rather than as a command. Right. But there must be specific language there that says that the legislature has that power. Cannot just arbitrarily assume. Because, see, constitutions are instruments of government, and it's a delegation of power, receiving their just powers under the consent of the governed. A specific constitutional provision that its provisions are mandatory or prohibited unless by express words declared to be otherwise will, of course, be given effect. Such a declaration applies to all sections of the Constitution alike and is binding on every department of the state government, whether legislative, executive, or judicial. That's right. It applies all the time, the same way, every time, everywhere. And then when you get into, I think it was, there it is, shall or may in Section 99, when interpreting Constitution provisions, the word shall is presumed to have a mandatory meaning, although the word shall may receive a permissive interpretation when necessary to carry out the true intent of the provision in which that word is found. Thus, use of the word shall is not always conclusive. Now, that's the bar speak. That's the judicial branch, because American jurisprudence is nothing but case law. Now, shall is mandatory, period. You shall or shall not, like, shalt not commit murder. Well, you can commit murder over here. No, it's not murder then. You can't say, you can't do it here, shall not, and then over here say you can. No. Now, let's get into that section 100, where it talks about, in general, when we're talking about language, of construction of constitutions, determining its operative effect of self-executing or not self-executing in general. A constitution is usually a declaration of what? Principles of the fundamental law. Many of its provisions being only commands to the legislature to enact laws, to carry out the purposes of the framers of the Constitution, or mere restrictions upon the power of the legislature to pass laws. However, it is entirely within the power of those who establish and adopt the Constitution to make any of its provisions self-executing, that is, operative without any necessity for further legislation. Criteria which may be relevant in determining whether a constitutional provision is self-executing or not include a description of the right in detail, such as the means for its enjoyment and protection, the absence of any directive to the legislature for further action. What is that again? The absence of any directive to the legislature for further action. A particular informative legislative history is the provision's intended operation and a consistency of self-execution with the scheme of rights established in the Constitution as a whole. Here's your observation, Captain Obvious here. Even without the benefit of a declaration that they are self-executing, constitutional provisions in what? Bills of rights, that's plural, and those merely declaratory of the common law, are usually considered self-executing, as are provisions which specifically prohibit particular conduct. All right. So, now that we know that this is, what we're reading here is actually the common law. It's already the law. This is a Bill of Rights that are just, it's merely declaratory of the common law. It's already the law. But they're laying it down to make it very clear and declaring this as an instrument of government. The law of the nation. A clear distinction exists between the question whether constitutional provision is mandatory or directory or whether it is self-executing or requires legislation in order to give it effect. Provision may be mandatory without being self-executing, and a provision may be self-executing even though it contains some mandatory language. Well, when we're talking about a Bill of Rights, which is already just merely declaratory of the common law, of course it's mandatory because the people deem it that way. We're all supposed, this is that common sense law that's supposed to be self-evident. We'll get back to that. All right. So, keep that in mind when you're reading any kind of bills of rights, declarations of rights. It's just merely declaratory of the common law. It's already the law. Okay. So, number 9 here. That in controversies respecting property and suits between man and man, the ancient trial by jury is preferable to any other and ought to be held sacred. Now, this is where they try to say, oh, well, the 7th Amendment, that's for civil. No. No. That's a suit at common law. Then say, in civil suits. So now we're getting a breakdown of, well, wait a minute. General warrants for persons. That's right. The right of the people to be secure in their person, papers, houses, and effects. See, who is this really supposed to be applying to? Supposed to be applying to them. Not supposed to be applying to the people in the private or man in the private. None of it is. We're supposed to be free, equal, independent, blah, 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 blah. Right? Yeah, that's right. I know that's a hard concept to grasp that, well, but the law has to apply to everybody. What law? The common law, the law that's common to all? Absolutely. But legitimate statutes are not law. Not in the sense of common law or law of the land. That's policy. And there's a very clear, distinct difference that's made by a set of men. The legislature. Supposed to be. Not supposed to. The executive branch is supposed to execute the laws of its creation and is not supposed to be making its own rules. All right. Ancient trial by referred to any other and ought to be held sacred. 12 here. That the freedom of the press is one of the greatest bulwarks of liberty, can never be restrained but by despotic governments. Well, isn't that what YouTube just did to me again? And so many other people? Because I talked about some sort of medical stuff. How about the existence of COVID-19? Which I have proof from the state of Idaho and under a public records request that there is no such proof of COVID-19's existence. I also have other people's requests, public record requests, for proof of COVID-19's existence from the CDC, the WHO, all saying, nope, we have no such records. So, the truth be told, it's all shmew, it doesn't exist. Now, let's get into this right here because this is the Second Amendment in its full length. That a well-regulated militia composed of the body of the people trained to arms is the proper, natural, and safe defense of a free state. That standing armies in time of peace should be avoided as dangerous to liberty, and that in all cases, the military should be under strict subordination to and be governed by the civil power. Okay? No military brothers and sisters out there that don't know this and don't quite comprehend how this works. The military is subordinate to the civil power. The militia is the people. And even per the United States Code, there's 3 parts to the militia. The well-regulated militia, federal and state, being necessary for the security of a free state. Second Amendment, that comes from right there. And a safe defense of a free state. They're supposed to be acting in defense from foreign invasion or internal insurrection. That would be Article 4, Section 4 now, wouldn't it? And they should be under strict subordination to and be governed by the civil power. That's us. The people. Okay? And then the state level organized, well-regulated militia, per the United States Code, Title 10. And then there's the unorganized by state and federal, because they don't have any authority over that. It is composed of the body of the people. All able-bodied males between the age of 18 to 64 are automatically duty-bound to be in the, unorganized militia. That's part of that civil power, like merchant marines and, the stuff that's been around since 1553. That power that belongs to the people. All right. 14, that the people have a right to uniform government. And therefore, that no government separate from or independent of the government of Virginia ought to be erected or established within the limits thereof. Now some will argue, well, yes, for Virginia. Do you know how big Virginia was in 1776? Because going into this other document there, Francis Newton Thorpe has all the list of the constitutions and the actual delegation of the land to those colonies when they did their constitutions and became independent sovereign nation states within the territory of Virginia. Then Virginia ceded that land, just like it is in Article 4, Section 3. New states may be admitted to the Union upon approval by Congress. That's part of that Article 4, Section 4, how they're supposed to guarantee a republican form of government. One, they're supposed to do the Organic Act for the territory that sets up the distinct three branches of government, our republican form of government. That's how they're supposed to ensure that. And then provide oversight of that throughout after it's been approved by Congress. See, Congress is supposed to go, yeah, okay, I see your statutes you've laid down, and then your Constitution. We reviewed all of that, and we'll go ahead and approve that and ratify that in convention. Okay, and then it's got to be submitted to the people to be ratified by the people. That's right. So, that being said, we will go to number 15 here. That no free government or the blessings of liberty. That no free government or the blessings of liberty can be preserved to any people but by a firm adherence to justice, moderation, temperance, frugality, and virtue, and by frequent reoccurrence to fundamental principles. So things like no homosexuality, no sexual immorality, not in the streets, not in the schools, nowhere. What you do in the private, that's in the private. But when we're talking about government, no abortions. Government is not supposed to be supporting that, authorizing that. You can't, because that's a fundamental principle. Thou shalt not commit murder. And one of them fundamental principles from the Bible is man shall not lay with man. Homosexuality, sexual immorality. That's a principle, a fundamental principle from the laws of nature. One of the 6 primitive laws. Man is to be, we're supposed to be attracted to one another. One another. There's only 2. That's right. Man and man with a womb. Okay? That's it. That's what womb man means. Man with a womb. Now, here we go. The best for last. That religion. Pay really close attention here, folks. And I mean really close. Or the duty which we owe to our Creator. That's a capital C there. Proper noun. And the manner of discharging it can be directed by reason and conviction, not by force or violence. And therefore, all men are equally entitled to the free exercise of religion according to the dictates of conscience. Religion is liberty of conscience, the right to think for ourselves. That is what religion is. Not going to church, not that organized 501c3 religion. No. That's not what they're talking about here. That's not the principles being declared, laid down here. But let's continue reading there. Dictates of conscience. And that it is the mutual duty of all to practice Christian forbearance, love, and charity towards each other. Adopted unanimously June 12, 1770 in the Virginia Convention of Delegates, drafted by Mr. George Mason. Gee, that's kind of basically the same thing that's right here in the book. Imagine that. So the right of conscience, the right of self-determination, the right to think for ourselves. And that goes back to the very beginning, the fundamental principle of one of the 6 primitive laws of nature. Is that when man is properly organized, he knows the difference between moral good and moral evil, moral wrong. That can be directed by reason and conviction, not by force or violence. So this is where we have to determine, black or white here. Are you of sound mind, possessing logic and reason, or are you insane? That's your 2 choices. There's no, just like man and woman, there's only 2 choices. There is nothing else. I mean, yeah, we can get into the strange anomaly with hermaphrodites, but they still either have a womb or they do not. Right? That's the W-O. Whoa. Aside from my going joke of, it's a warning to man. Whoa, man. Stay away from that one. Came with a warning label. God gave us a warning label there. Whoa, man. So, that's just my going joke. But woo. Man with womb. That's it. All right. So now that we've covered the Virginia Declaration of Rights, June 12, 1776, now see, they've gotten rid of the citation from Francis Newton Thorpe, volume 7, pages 3812 through 3814, they've gotten rid of that. Now if we look at my PDF saved of this thing, now this right here, this is that page numbers, it's referenced from Annals of America here. See, there's that 3813, 3814, and 3815. Pardon me. No, it stops at 3814. 3815 is where it gets into the actual the Constitution or form of government agreed to and resolved upon the delegates and representatives of the several counties and what? Corporations of Virginia. Because that's who the people are. I've said this over and over and over and over and over and over again. And mankind in general seems to want to overlook who the people really are. And if we could get that clear distinction between the free inhabitants, the free citizens, as it says in the Articles of Confederation, and I'm talking about a lowercase c, which is under inhabitant under the law of nations, is a different kind of citizen. Those ones that like it said in the Virginia Declaration of Rights, to have that right of suffrage, you kind of have to have some ties, like, I don't know, own land. You have to have established your settlement. Okay. But here we're going to go to Avalon real quick, because we're again exposing Avalon. When we go to the Virginia Constitution, all right, let's try this again. Oh, wait. They don't even have it on here anymore? Wow. They're not even listing the Virginia Constitution on here now. Wow. Let me see. Wait a minute. Let's just see if I can. Yeah. Yep, they took it completely out of here. Oh, no, never mind. Guess it was. Guess it has to be Constitution of Virginia, not Virginia Constitution. I notice it's the Constitution of Virginia, not State of Virginia. But watch what happens. The resource you're looking for has been removed, had its name changed, or is temporarily unavailable. Been that way for quite a few years now. So why? Why are you hiding it? Quite interesting. Why Avalon would hide that, why they changed it, why they got rid of the citation on the Virginia Declaration of Rights of Francis Newton Thorpe, the 7th volume. You know, they changed all that. And here's the proof of it. Because this came right from Gale, right here. And see, they've even altered that, which is probably the reason why they've gotten rid of it, of the citation for 7S Thorpe, is because they don't want us to find it. But have no fear, Kirk is here. So now we're going to get into that Constitution. The Constitution, or form of government. So that's what the Constitution is, the conscience of the mind, control. This controls the mind of all of the emoluments that are enumerated here. Whereas George III, King of Great Britain and Ireland and Elector of Hanover, heretofore entrusted with the exercise of kingly office in this government, hath endeavored to prevent the same into a detestable and insupportable tyranny by putting his negative on laws the most wholesome and necessary for the public good. Now I actually want to stop because I want to read the top portion here from my Annals of America. Okay. What it says here from the book, that top portion up here. I don't know if it'll show that. The upper section here. The first Virginia Constitution, Virginia's, was probably the most famous of early constitutions, and it served as a model for other states. As a reaction to the tyranny of the royal governors, the legislature was given virtually all the governing power. Members of the executive and judicial branches were chosen by the House of Burgess. A provincial convention drafted this constitution in May and adopted it on June 29, 1776, without submitting it to a referendum. That's right. Because it didn't need to. Because we're creating the foundation. The law of the nation, the government. Oh, but that's Virginia. It's Virginia. It's Virginia. Again, 7 of the territories, known as states now, were colonies there, were created out of the territory of Virginia. It's called the Meets and Bounds. That's in. It's actually found in the First Charter of Virginia, 1606, and in 1611-12 there, it even says go out and colonize the rest of the territory of Virginia. The Plymouth, New Plymouth there. When you read the Mayflower Compact, it says we're settling in the northern parts of Virginia, and we're going to abide by the law of Virginia. That's pretty much all the Mayflower Compact says or reads, as it is written. Okay, so now we're going to go back to reading that, and again, these all go together. They have to go together because you're going to see why. Because this was first done in a Continental Congress. By denying his governors permissions to pass laws of immediate and pressing importance unless suspended in their operation for his assent, and when so suspended, neglecting to attend to them for many years. Dereliction of duty, right? Wouldn't that be dereliction of duty? And again, pay very close attention to this stuff, folks, because we really, 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 really need to pay attention and wake up to what's going on, what has been going on. Okay? By refusing to pass certain other laws, unless the persons to be benefited by them would relinquish the estimable right of representation in the legislature. The ones that it was supposed to be benefited by them? The corporations, the persons, the fictions? Okay. Now, here's part of the problem. One of the big, big problems. By dissolving legislative assemblies repeatedly and continually for opposing with manly firmness his invasions of the rights of the people. Now, wait a minute. This is the Constitution. This isn't the Declaration of Independence yet. Keep that one in mind. When dissolved, by refusing to call others for a long space of time, thereby leaving the political system without any legislative head. By endeavoring to prevent the population of our country, and for that purpose obstructing the laws for the naturalization of foreigners. Let me repeat that again for those in the way back. By endeavoring to prevent the population of our country, great, and for that purpose obstructing the laws for the naturalization of foreigners. Oh. Yeah, about that. Foreign invasion. Right, they can immigrate here, but we have an immigration statutory law, which should be in the statutes at large, not from the code. Wrong form of government. Wrong body of law. By keeping among us in times of peace standing armies and ships of war. Now remember, an army is an armed body of men. That's what an army is. Army, armed body of men. By effecting to render the military independent of and superior to the civil power. Oh, would that be like FBI, DOJ, the CIA, police officers? Because a well-regulated militia being necessary for the security of a free state. This is supposed to be the militia, the organized militia. Why are they not wearing military uniform? They're wearing some other disguise. I'm sorry for the good guys out there, the good police officers out there, but this is the truth. That's not supposed to be there. It's not part of our form of government. It's part of the tyranny and corruption. Becomes a revenue generator, enforcing policy in the private. But learn, listen and learn. By effecting to render the military independent of and superior to the civil power. By combining with others to subject us to a foreign jurisdiction. What they're referring to there? Giving his assent to their pretended acts of legislation. What our founders are referring to there is that Roman civil law, the code. That's all enforced by bills of pains and penalties, bills of attainder. And you police officers out there are the ones that are out there enforcing it. That's a foreign jurisdiction. That is not law of the land. And what it's meant by pretended acts of legislation is usurping their powers. And just because the legislators made it doesn't mean that it's lawful. It's pretended acts of the legislation. Right? For quartering large bodies of armed troops among us. That's them police officers. That's BLM, as in Bureau of Land Management. EPA. Maybe not. I don't know if EPA is armed or not. Far as I knew, BLM is actually armed. FBI is armed. CIA is armed. For cutting off our trade with all parts of the world. For imposing taxes on us without our consent. This is in the Constitution, folks. This is not the Declaration of Independence yet. For depriving us of the benefits of trial by jury. That's right, because the right to trial by jury goes clear back to its origin as the Aziz of Clarendon of 1166. Yeah, that far back, folks. Not something new in 1776. For transporting us beyond seas to be tried for pretended offenses. Gee, would that be like what they've been doing to us for a long time? Well, the code says, and, well, it's pretended acts of the legislature, but we're going to go ahead and pretend it's legitimate, and I'm here. I got to collect a paycheck, so I have to arrest you. I have to take you to jail, and we got to do all of this so that we can pay ourselves. Isn't that quartering large bodies of armed troops among us? Are we not paying for that through taxes or through fines based on the code that promises that award of fines, which goes to themselves? There's no accuser. There's no injured party. None of those fines go to the injured party, the injured man or woman. For suspending our own legislatures and declaring themselves invested with the power to legislate for us in all cases whatsoever. What are they talking about there? Then pretended acts of legislation, and what they were discussing before, dissolving the entire legislative assembly, and then declaring themselves invested with the power to legislate for us in all cases. So here's a question for you folks out there. Can you name one case, just one, that goes through the Seventh Amendment, that's a suit at common law, that's not heard in any courts of the United States, that's a suit between a man and a man? List the parties there. That there's no legislation already made for it. What they're referring to there is the common law is the common law, and the common law dictates suits at common law. That's the law. We don't need the legislature to legislate anything, because the common law already dictates the law. All of it. Due process of law and the whole 9 yards comes from the common law. It doesn't come from a statute or the code. It's already the law. Common law. Common sense law. It's the law that is common to all. And I'm not talking about the common law of England. I'm talking about the American common law. Yes, if you read history, yes, we brought with us in 1606 the English common law, but only those parts of the common law that were conducive to the public weal. And then they started making their own common law. By inciting insurrections of our fellow subjects with the allurements of forfeiture and confiscation. Oh my gosh. That's them, what? Bills of attainder. Well, we'll pay you a paycheck so you can, pay for your house, so we're actually supplying you with the ability to buy a house if you incite insurrections against your fellow man, which is turn on your emergency lights and use it for something other than an emergency, make an unlawful arrest. Well, I was initiating a traffic stop. No, you're making an arrest of our liberty, which is supposed to be so fundamentally principally founded as a fundamental law that no man can deprive another man of his liberty without a warrant. That's what the Fourth Amendment protects us from. And not only that, furthermore, the common law does, which is where the Fourth Amendment comes from. But an arrest is any deprivation of liberty. An arrest is not putting handcuffs on somebody and taking them to jail. That's what we've all been taught and led to believe today. But an arrest is, hey, you stop. That is an arrest. Whether you use emergency lights for other than an emergency purpose, whether you're on the streets on a bicycle, out on a boat. Hey, you, stop. You guys got a fishing license? You got, what do you got? You got permission out here? We don't need to seek permission to exercise any of our rights. Fishing is a commercial term. Hunting is a commercial term. It's called foraging for food in the private. But here we go. By prompting our Negroes to rise in arms against us, those very Negroes whom, by an inhumane use of his negative, he hath refused us permission to exclude by law. By law. Now we're getting into that bylaws crap. By endeavoring to bring on the inhabitants of our frontiers the merciless Indian savages, whose known rule of warfare is an undistinguished destruction of all ages, sexes, and conditions of existence. That's probably a trigger for some people out there. By transporting at this time a large army of foreign mercenaries to complete the works of death, desolation, and tyranny already begun with circumstances of cruelty and perfidy unworthy the head of a civilized nation. Are we getting the reasons why we're separating from Great Britain again? Well, let's get back there. But by answering our repeated petitions for redress with a repetition of injuries, and finally by abandoning the helm of government and declaring us out of his allegiance and protection. That's that dissolving the legislative assemblies and not bringing anybody in and leaving it vacant for a while. Because our petitions, technically speaking, should be done by, handled by the legislature, right? By the General Assembly. By which several acts of misrule, the government of this country, as formerly exercised under the Crown of Great Britain, is totally dissolved. What's this doing in the Constitution? We haven't gotten to the Declaration of Independence yet. This is June 29th. I'm referring to the Lee's Resolution. Again, folks, the Declaration of Independence is not the document that separated us from Great Britain. It was the Lee's Resolution. It was the Virginia Declaration of Rights in this Virginia Constitution right here. But more specifically, the actual document is Lee's Resolution, June 7th, which was done, resolved, July 2nd. We, therefore, the delegates and representatives of the good people of Virginia, have maturely considered the premises and viewing with great concern the deplorable conditions to which this once happy country must be reduced, unless some regular adequate mode of civil polity is speedily adopted, and in compliance with the recommendation of the General Congress, do ordain and declare the future form of government of Virginia to be as followeth. The legislative, executive, and judicial department shall be separate and distinct, so that neither exercise the powers properly belonging to the other, nor shall any person exercise the powers of more than one of them at the same time, except that justices of the county courts shall be eligible to either house of assembly. The legislative shall be formed of two distinct branches, who together shall be a complete legislature. They shall meet once or oftener every year, and shall be called the General Assembly of Virginia. One of these shall be called the House of Delegates, and consist of 2 representatives to be chosen for each county, and for the district of West Augusta annually, and reside in, and are freeholders of the same, or duly qualified according to law, not by law, but to law, and also one delegate or representative to be chosen annually for the city of Williamsburg and for the borough of Norfolk, and be allowed particular representation by the legislature. But when any city or borough shall so decrease as that the number of persons having right of suffrage therein shall have been, for the space of 7 years successively, less than half the number of voters in some of one county in Virginia, such city or borough thenceforward shall cease to send a delegate or representative to the assembly. See, we're supposed to have delegates that are chosen by the people. Imagine that. But it's in the House. All right. So, running a little low on time here, but I want to, this is something that can be read, and I really need to get this actual PDF out there. I know some people, you can find it over here and over there. I don't trust it. But see, look at this one. Now, remember, this was got snagged clear back to 2007. Source: the federal and state constitutions, colonial charters, and other organic laws of the states, territories, and colonies, now or heretofore forming the United States of America, compiled and edited under the Act of Congress, June 30th, 1906, by Francis Newton Thorpe, Washington, D.C., Government Printing Office, 1909. And this was on Avalon at one point in time. Okay? Now, we're going to go over here to that Declaration of Independence. Because this is the grand finale here. Let's just see where we're at here. Now, before we get too far into that, I'm going to read from my Annals of America. All right. Oh, I did stop screen share. Y'all just can't see me. Okay. So, now, Annals of America, Volume 2, Declaration of Independence, page 447. The Declaration of Independence was formally adopted by the delegates to the Second Continental Congress meeting in Philadelphia on July 4, 1776. 2 days earlier, a resolution had been passed which said that these united colonies are, and of right, ought to be, free and independent states, that they are absolved from all allegiance to the British Crown, and that all political connection between them and the state of Great Britain is, and ought to be, totally dissolved. End quote. The introduction on June 7th of this resolution by Richard Henry Lee of Virginia had been followed by the appointment of a committee to draft a statement declaring the reasons for the impending separation. Let me reiterate. The introduction on June 7th of this resolution by Richard Henry Lee of Virginia had been followed by the appointment of a committee to draft a statement declaring the reasons for the impending separation. Of the members of this committee, which included Thomas Jefferson, John Adams, Benjamin Franklin, Roger Sherman, and Robert Livingston, it was Jefferson who prepared the draft, submitting it to the others for consideration. Minor changes in Jefferson's draft were suggested by Adams and Franklin. Some further alterations were made after it was presented to the Congress on June 28th. The final words, however, were still largely those of Jefferson. At its passage, it was signed only by John Hancock, the presiding officer. 4 days later, the Declaration of Independence was read aloud in the city of Philadelphia at what later became Independence Square. Copies were made, sent to the legislatures of the colonies, and published throughout the country. The Declaration was not signed by the other members of the Congress until August 2nd, when a copy engrossed on the parchment was witnessed with their names. Come on. So now let's read from the Declaration of Independence here. When in the course of human events, it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station. Now, wait. Remember we were reading before to be reduced back down into that equal station, private station, from whence they came from before, blah, blah, blah. There's some significance in the use of these words. To which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them. A decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. This is declaring the causes for the separation. It was the Lee's resolution that separated us. Okay. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. That's just among these unalienable rights. It's not all of them. That to secure these rights from the laws of nature, governments are instituted among men, not among kings. This is that clear ideological difference in our form of government versus the monarchy. Okay. Governments, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. Not everybody is governed by the Constitution. But what that's referring to is deriving their just powers. It is a delegation of power. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles. Oh, I don't know, that frequent reoccurrence to fundamental principles, and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Again, the intent of creating government is to secure our safety and happiness and to defend us. That's it. That is the intent. Right there. Prudence indeed will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes. And accordingly, all experience hath shown that, pay attention folks, that mankind are more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security. I'm going to reiterate that. It is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards. Guards defend our safety and happiness for their future security. Okay. What do you think's going on? Now, again, I reiterate this again when I've called it out. This midterm election cycle and the last election there, this was the change of the guard. Plain and simple. Continuity of government. Buried by Trump there, how all this is working out. Okay. The history. Oh, wait. Such has been the patient sufferance of these colonies, and such is now the necessity which constrains them to alter their former systems of government. The history of the present King of Great Britain is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations, all having in direct object the establishment of an absolute tyranny over these states. To prove this, let facts be submitted to a candid world. He has refused his assent to laws the most wholesome and necessary for the public good. He has forbidden his governors to pass laws of immediate and pressing importance unless suspended in their operation till his assent should be obtained, and so suspended, he has utterly neglected to attend to them. Wait a minute. This sounds like the Virginia Constitution. He has called together legislative bodies at places unusual, uncomfortable, and distant from the depository of the public records for the sole purpose of fatiguing them into compliance with his measures. He has dissolved representative houses repeatedly for opposing with manly firmness his invasions on the rights of the people. See, that's in the Virginia Constitution, ain't it? has refused for a long time after such dissolutions to cause others to be elected, whereby the legislative powers incapable of annihilation have returned to the people at large for their exercise, the state remaining in the meantime exposed to all the dangers of invasions from without and convulsions within. He has endeavored to prevent the population of these states for the purpose of obstructing the laws of naturalization of foreigners, refusing to pass others to encourage their migration hither, and raising the conditions of new appropriations of lands. He has obstructed the administration of justice by refusing his assent to laws for establishing judiciary powers. He has made, pay attention here, he has made judges dependent on his will alone for the tenure of their offices and the amount and payment of their salaries. So you do what I tell you to do, or you ain't getting paid. Instead of receiving a just compensation for performing the duties. This is the bell ringer right here, folks. Ding, 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 ding. He has erected a multitude of new offices and sent hither swarms of officers to harass our people and eat out their substance. Now these kind of go together, so pay attention. He has kept among us in times of peace standing armies without the consent of our legislatures. And what that means is a declaration of war. Not, oh, well, the legislature said we can create this policy officer. No, he has erected a multitude of new offices. That's foreign to our form of government, repugnant to our law. And sending hither swarms of officers to harass our people and eat out their substance is enforcing the code that's a fine or jail time that eats out our substance. You're taking food off the table. You're taking clothes off the backs of the people with these bills of attainder and bills of pains and penalties. You're the one out there enforcing them, police officers. Stop doing it. Starts with you, folks. He has effected to render the military independent of and superior to the civil power. There you go. You're acting like you got military power and that you're above the people. He has combined with others to subject us to a jurisdiction foreign to our Constitution and unacknowledged by our laws, given his assent to their acts of pretended legislation, for quartering large bodies of armed troops among us. I mean, that's exactly what's happening with the police officer force. They're armed troops. And they're being quartered. They're getting paid. How else do you think they pay for their houses and their cars and everything else? And then, for protecting them by a mock trial from punishment for any murders which they should commit on the inhabitants of these states. Oh, well, we did our own internal investigation and we found no wrongdoing by the officers. That's total subversion. That's the fox guard in the hen house. Why in the heck are you doing your own investigation into yourself when investigation is supposed to be done by the legislature? The legislature is the one that has the power to do investigations. For protecting them by a mock trial from punishment for any murders which they should commit on the inhabitants of these states. For cutting off our trade with all parts of the world. I mean, again, this all in that Virginia Constitution, ain't it? For imposing taxes on us without our consent. For depriving of us, in many cases, of the benefits of trial by jury. for transporting us beyond seas, be tried for pretended offenses, for abolishing the free system of English laws in the neighboring province, establishing therein an arbitrary government, and enlarging its boundaries so as to render it at once an example and fit instrument, introducing the same absolute rule into these colonies over and over and over again, for taking away our charters, abolishing our most valuable laws, and altering fundamentally the forms of our governments, for suspending our own legislatures and declaring themselves invested with the power to legislate for us in all cases whatsoever. He has abdicated government here by declaring us out of his protection and waging war against us. He has plundered our seas, ravaged our coasts, burned our towns, and destroyed the lives of our people. He is at this time transporting large armies of foreign mercenaries to complete the works of death, desolation, and tyranny already begun with circumstances of cruelty and perfidy scarcely paralleled in the most barbarous ages and totally unworthy the head of a civilized nation. All right, where'd you go, mouse? There we go. He has constrained our fellow citizens taken captive on the high seas to bear arms against their country, to become the executioners of their friends and brethren, or to fall themselves by their hands. Let that sink in. He has excited domestic insurrection among us, and has endeavored to bring on the inhabitants of our frontiers, the merciless Indian savages, whose known rule of warfare is an undistinguished destruction of all ages, sexes, and conditions. In every stage of these oppressions, we have petitioned for the redress in the most humble terms. Our repeated petitions have been answered only by repeated injury. A prince whose character is thus marked by every act by which may define a tyrant is unfit to be the ruler of a free people. Now, this is where we get into that petition, the right of petition, the right of petition. That has to be done first. Because we can't claim we're under absolute despotism until you've exercised the right of petition for the redress of grievances. Cannot stress that enough. That's why it's the first. Then you go to the second. Nor have we been wanting in our attentions to our British brethren. We have warned them from time to time of attempts by their legislature to extend an unwarrantable jurisdiction over us. That's that admiralty and maritime jurisdiction, or admiralty and vice admiralty jurisdiction. That's in the Declaration for the Causes and Necessity of Taking Up Arms, July 6, 1775, a year prior. They declared the causes for taking up arms was for extending admiralty and vice admiralty jurisdiction beyond its ancient limits. And that's what this is referring to here. Again, subjecting us to a jurisdiction foreign to us. It doesn't belong on the land. That authority doesn't actually even exist even on the water. We reminded them of the circumstance of immigration and settlement here, which was what? Fleeing religious persecution from the crown. It's even in the Magna Carta 1215, trying to separate from the Roman Catholic Church. The good Christian people, the Protestants, want to separate from the British Crown, the Roman Catholic Church, Catholicism, as an ideology. That's what they came here for. They were refugees to begin with, fleeing Great Britain, fleeing the Roman Catholic Church for religious persecutions, religious reasons. That's the real truth. We have appealed to their native justice and magnanimity, and we have conjured them by the ties of our common kindred to disavow these usurpations, which would inevitably interrupt our connections and correspondence. They too have been deaf to the voice of justice and of consanguinity. Now, say that one 3 times fast. We must therefore acquiesce in the necessity which denounces our separation, and hold them as we hold the rest of mankind, enemies in war, in peace, friends. We, therefore, the representative of the United States of America, in General Congress assembled, appealed to the Supreme Judge of the world for the rectitude of our intentions, do, in the name and by the authority of the good people of these colonies, solemnly publish and declare that these united colonies are, and of right ought to be, free and independent states, that they are absolved from all allegiance to the British Crown, and that all political connection between them and the state of Great Britain is, and ought to be, totally dissolved, and that, as free and independent states, they have full power to levy war, conclude peace, contract alliances, establish commerce, and do all other acts and things which independent states may of right do, and for the support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives and fortunes and our sacred honor. Signed by John Hancock. All right. So now, do we get the bigger picture here? I hope so. I really hope so. This time around, wake up, people. Do something. Let's go. Get off your ass. It's time to take some action. So, I hope people learn from this. What were the causes for declaring the separation from Great Britain? And take a look around. Some of you don't have to look too far because it happened to you. The same it's happened to me. Been subjected to this usurpation of power, maladministration, pretended acts of legislation, sending hither swarms of officers to harass our people and eat out our substance. CPS workers, police officers, sheriff deputies, There's supposed to be a sheriff and one deputy. One. We're not supposed to have standing armies. No armed bodies of men. Now, the organized militia, for military purposes, that is subordinate to the people, the civil power, the merchant marines, U.S. Marshals, the civil power, just saying. We have that power. We have not only the right, but a duty to throw off such despotism. We have the right to alter, reform, or abolish anything at any time we deem it necessary. This crap is standing on a street corner with a sign, which y'all call protesting. That's called picketing. That's not protesting. And it doesn't do anything. We're waking people up. No, you're not. Not really. All you're doing is standing there making a fool of yourself when you could be educating yourself on what you can actually do. Actions. Following due process of law. As the common law dictates. The law of the land dictates. You know, I've been out here trying to educate my fellow man now. What's it going on? Let's see, this is 2023. Started on doing lives on Facebook in 2017 and was on Blog Talk Radio for about a year and a half prior to that. About 8 years, folks. About 8 years I've been here. Now, I did take a little bit of time off there, almost a year. But I did come back. I was still doing my Patreon Wednesday night workshop. You know, I was doing Monday, Wednesdays, Fridays, 3 nights a week. Back when we had Chris and then John. And John went away and it was just me and Chris. And then Chris was murdered November 15th, 2020. Got a little too close to some good stuff. No matter what some of the trolls may tell you out there, or what you may come across, a bunch of BS. Which that trial's still pending for Neely. A lot of people don't understand you can't talk about that stuff. But I think they have to learn the hard way. They think they're above the law. So, I'm doing what I can do to educate my fellow man so we can come together. So that we can peaceably assemble, so we can consult for our common good and alter, reform, or abolish anything at any time we deem it necessary. We have to have enough people together. We have to assemble. We have to reassemble the General Assembly. So I highly recommend people get over there on the national-assembly.net website. Okay. You can start right here. Assembly introduction video, you can start there. Then you can go to resources and you can go through all of these. Assembly supporting videos, import and censored videos, 10 steps to an assembly. Here's the handbook. Looks like they're, whoa, lost it. Authority documents, nation states project, notice for the Hague, open letter to public notice. Okay, there's all sorts of stuff. Here's that training manual, the citizens handbook, training manual. And then over here, conference call info. Okay, this is every Thursday night. 6 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Mountain, 8 p.m. Central, 9 p.m. Eastern. The first part is a business call. That's for national-assembly.net as an educational forum. That's the second part, to give the education. General discussion, Q&A, and teaching. But it's a business, so they have to have a business meeting. And so for those of you that may be new, make sure that you mute your phone. As soon as you join, make sure that you're muted at all times, so we don't have any background noises interrupting the call. It's called decorum, some respect, and you don't speak out of turn. If you think you want to speak, you say, "May I?" And you have to wait until you are acknowledged by the moderator. You don't speak until you are acknowledged and are given the floor. It's called decorum. Now, here's a tutorial for using your smartphones. That's over there on YouTube. Tutorial video for desktop computers here. You can actually download and install the app. Free conference call. You can download it on your phone. It's both for Android and for Apple iPhones. You can download the app on your computer, your desktop, your laptop. Okay? Pretty simple. If you got any, try to watch the videos if you're really having a hard time. But you also can just literally just call in on your phone. Okay. There's your information here regarding the call and anything else that's here. Read. Okay. And of course, oh no, that's the wrong one. That's Streamlabs. I thought that was my kirkslawcorner.com. And I don't want to go to that because that'll take me to a dashboard, which it may do anyways, default. Okay, so here's my website. Okay, and you start right here. This is how you get to the educational series real quick and easy. kirkslawcorner.com. Educational series. You click on that, and then you go take yourself there to YouTube to get to the other 8. Watch this one right here, or just go straight to YouTube and watch it through YouTube. It's in a playlist. Now there's some more videos in that playlist. Okay? And I still haven't actually figured this part out, the email list. So put that plug out there, looking for somebody to help with that that's knowledgeable on that stuff. Now, if you want to help support here, you can send whatever you want to send over there to the office. Right here's the address. Okay? down at the bottom of the web page. Now, here's Patreon. That's the other way. And I don't want to click on that because it'll show you it'll log me in as the administrator for Patreon, so it won't show what it looks like. Well, as a user. Well, anyways, that'll get you to Patreon. Okay, Tier 1, Tier 2 is just for basic donation to support what I'm already doing right here, right now. Every Monday Night Law. Okay? Or court cases and what else, other things that I've got going on, petitions and that kind of stuff. Okay? That's all to help support. Now, Tier 3 is how you get into Wednesday Night Workshop. Then Tier 4, if you want one-on-one time with me, that's it. Tier 4. That's where you got to sign up. You want one-on-one time with me? You know, my time is very limited, very busy. And again, if you happen to come across my phone number somehow, don't just think you can just call me. Okay? At a bare minimum, if you seriously think that you need to talk to me, start by a text message. But be forewarned, I don't just drop what I'm doing and take people's phone calls. You know, there's just not enough hours in a day. Thousands of people probably want to talk to me on a regular basis. I get it. I need help. The help you need is knowledge. Okay? And I think, yep, here's a Telegram link right here. Now, furthermore, links right up here. This will get you to my Rumble channel, my Facebook page, my Telegram. This is the one I started there that, I don't know, not a whole lot of interest going on over there, but it's still there. That's where was trying to do some education and stuff through that and try to bring people together to bring them over to the National Assembly call. But can't get people to even do the basics. Now, for the other part, the library. Many times people ask, well, where should I start? What should I read? Okay, I did this part right here. Start right here. This is a good place to start reading to learn the basics of American common law and the law of nations, or the principles of the law of nature as international law. Treatise on arrest and false imprisonment, the authority of law. Here's the law of nations. Then you got the report of the Commission on Unalienable Rights. That's that section. Start there. Blow your frickin' mind. Okay? Then, we want to talk about the common law on parliamentary practice and the 2 manuals on the rules of procedure that I have. Mason's Manual Legislative Procedure. This is the 2010 edition. This is Jefferson's Manual. And this is the 1953 edition of Mason's Manual. But this one, the very first one, this is that Lex Parliamentary Americana, elements of the law and practice of the legislative assemblies in the United States of America by Luther Stearns Cushion, that this manual, Mason's Manual Legislative Procedure, references. So, in essence, skip the Mason's Manual and go right over here and read the law. I don't know how many times people, well, where can I find the common law? Where can I find the... Right there, in that book. It's the law and practice of the legislative assemblies in the United States of America. It's the law. Right there, in that book. You're not going to find it in the code, because that's not common law. It's in this book, right there. Okay, that's in 1856, so this goes through the history from English to, I'll be darned, what does it say? The American common law. That's right. Then, once you get the fundamental law, the common law, Once you get that stuff down, then you want to get into Constitution and constitutional law. Then you can get in reading the Commentaries on the Constitution by Joseph Story. Volume 1, Volume 2, Volume 3. Then, and actually this here, I believe this one, yeah, okay, this is the John Bouvet. Okay, the very first one. Bouvet's Law Dictionary, 1856, then Black's Law, then here's a Maxim of Laws. So this is 4th edition. But look at what the difference is here. A law dictionary, the Constitution and laws of the United States of America and the several states of the American Union, with references, the civil and other statistics of foreign law. Then you read Black's Law, Blackstone, which is English, definition of terms and phrases of American English jurisprudence, ancient and modern. Really? This one over here talks about the common law and the Constitution and all that good stuff. Black's Law does not. So, technically speaking, Black's Law Dictionary is a foreign dictionary. And then here, I did upload the Virginia Declaration of Rights right here. And now I haven't finished fixing this stuff down here, but here's the 1776 report. That's that report, President's Advisory Report of the Commission, 1776 Commission. And I can't remember parliamentary inquiry. I wonder if that's... Anyways. So, there's the basics of my website there to get around on. But Patreon, Telegram are the two main things that I really do from. I still, broadcast live on Facebook and YouTube when it lets me, because I got a strike. Again, may just end up having to sue the crap out of YouTube and knock this nonsense off. And then I believe up here are quick links to Facebook, Telegram, Patreon, YouTube, and Rumble. So there's a couple different places to get to those. Obviously right here on the home page. The links up here, you can get to that. But probably fastest is right there. And again, kirkslawcorner.com. All right? Just so everybody knows, all the videos that Chris and I did are still on my Facebook page. I have not taken anything down off of Facebook. So, I know it sucks for those of you who have ditched Facebook, but yeah, one of these days, figure something out. All right, folks, so I hope you all have a better understanding of what we're celebrating here, declaring our independence from Great Britain, from tyranny. What were the causes for the separation? That is what is so important to learn and apply it to today. Because if it was unlawful back then, it's unlawful today. But it's the same thing over and over and over and over and over and over again, because people would much rather sit around and suffer than right themselves and do something about it. Okay? All right. Much love, everybody. Have a wonderful night. And happy Independence Dave from Great Britain and Tyranny, or supposed to be. But welcome to the corruption that I hope comes to a serious, serious, serious end real soon. It looks like we might be hanging out for another year for Trump to come back as so-called president. But I have a feeling things are going to be drastically different when that time comes. So, in the meantime, food and water, guns and ammo, get yourself suited up. And be prepared for whatever may happen, folks. Plain and simple. Civil war may break out. We're already at war. Can't claim that it's not World War III, because it is. It's a worldwide war. Ain't no mistakes about it. Can't be out there doing treaties of peace if we ain't at war. So, and yes, pray. Pray, 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 pray. All you prayer warriors out there, thank you for what you have been doing and continue to do. Yeah, don't blow any fingers off. Be safe out there, folks. Be smart. Okay? Or try to be. But please pray for our military service members, the good guys, the white hats, definitely our U.S. Marshals, that civil power, merchant marines, U.S. Marshals, all that good stuff that's going on. Put on the full armor of God, folks. Those of you out there on the front lines, U.S. Marshals, merchant marines, military service members. And I want to thank everybody for their service that is in service, or has been in service, for this particular purpose. Thank you all for everything that you're doing and have done. God bless you all. God bless America. All right. Have a wonderful night. And we'll catch you if you're in on Patreon there in Tier 3. We'll see you then. Wednesday night, Thursday for the assembly call, and Monday nights for Monday Night Law. All right. Good night, everybody. Much love.